Welcome back, guys, into my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to do a live coding. Basically, what I'm going to talk about today is as a developer, as a software engineer, I found the test-driven development. Writing your unit test before writing any production code is very valuable tool, especially if you are implementing fairly, let's say, a complicated business rule in your application and stuff. So at that time, TDD definitely helps you. Okay. So today, what we can do, basically in terms of tool, I'll be using Visual Studio 2015 IDE to create my unit test and project. So the problem that I have decided to this website called Project Euler is very popular. I don't know if in an interview and stuff, usually there are a huge amount of problems, like mainly mathematical problem and all kind of logical problems here. And in interview, I have noticed that a lot of companies in interview, they basically try to use some of the problems from here, try to ask future candidate to resolve some of the problems from here. Of course, it's not going to be exactly the same problem. Maybe they might change some logic and stuff. But anyway, so this is a problem number 22 from Euler project. That's what we're gonna resolve by using we're gonna write using test-driven development. Okay. So basically, we need to. So if you can basically, this is the URL. You can basically look for what they're asking in description right here. So basically, they have this text file containing all the name, roughly 46 kilobytes of data in here. And the very first thing we have to do, those first name are not sorted in random order, as you can see right here. So very first thing we have to do, based on their problem, we have to sort it, right? Once the sort in alphabetical order, once sorting is done, then working out alphabetical value for each name, meaning like, for example, letter A would correspond to number 1, and letter G would correspond to 26. And finally, we're going to multiply this value by alphabetical position in the list to obtain the score. So this is very simple example. Here is an example right here. This is the first name, and which is worth. It's a 3 because C stands for 3, O for 15, and just basically corresponding numeric value. And the position of that column in the file, which is 938 name in the list. And we calculate the list. Basically, we grab this position 938 and this its value, the alphabetical value, and multiply. That is what we have to do. And basically, finally, we need to find the total of all the name score in the file. Okay, that's how to proceed. Let's look into the code. I have just a simple project right now. It's just a console application. I'm going to go into my solution and I'm going to add a new project here. This is going to be a simple class library project, and I'm going to say that is not what I was looking for. Why it's going into a template? It just okay. So basically, we're going to create a class library. Let's give it a name as name score project. So we have this project, and I'm just going to go ahead and add a name here, a class here. Let's give it a name as a name score calculator or something. And let's create a simple public class. And let's, based on that solution, basically we need to find the sum. Let's write a method, and then that method going to return a sum of the score. Calculate score. What? right now, even I'm not going to write any method, because if I do this one, it's kind of like violating the rule of test-driven development. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to ask the Visual Studio, hey Visual Studio, go ahead and create a unit test for this class. Create a unit test. Create unit test is supported only within public class. Since we don't have any, so I'm just going to say public string. Okay, just because without having any public method into my class, Visual Studio did not allow me to create a unit test. That's why I just created this. I will get rid of it. I don't really need it once it creates the unit test. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask Visual Studio to create a unit test for me. We're going to name score project, and this is going to be a test project, so I'm going to suffix it as that, and then I want to say okay. So that way I don't have to create a single project by myself. That's going to be a test project. Okay. So here is our, we don't really even care about this method. So we have two projects going on here. So basically we have three projects. One is a console application we're not using yet. And we have our test project and our main library where we'll be writing our code. Okay. So a couple of things into this class. I'm going to create a private variable of data type name score. Calculator. Okay, this is a class. Let's create instance of that name score calculator. And okay, once that is defined, next thing I'm going to do, let's go ahead and create a constructor. Sorry for that, guys. I mean to do this one inside the class, not inside the. I wrote this code inside the namespace. I mean to do this one inside the class, okay? All right, we have this private field and we have a default constructor here. And this is the name of our class. At Visual Studio created. So basically this is the class here, okay? And into the constructor, all I'm going to do here is just going to create the instance of our new method to be tested. Okay, we have instance of that guy. Now at this point, let's say we are ready to write our first unit test. So if you guys have not done unit testing code, so in Visual Studio, so you have to do some you have to have some attribute to the public method that you are testing. If you want to test the method, we need to have these test method attributes set. And we're going to say public void, let's say find name score, find sum of name scores, something like that. And we can do some assertion. We're going to say whether certain conditions are true or false. So to do that, there are a bunch of static methods provided by the API. One of the methods is array equal. say, let's see, I'm going to say, all right, the sum would be, I'm going to assert the sum would be 1 when I do, at this point, only method it has, it's just a method, that method called A that we had to write to make it so that Visual Studio would be able to create a class for us. So we even don't have that method. So I'm going to go ahead and create a method here. So Visual Studio is already complaining, hey, there is no such method. So I'm going to ask the Visual Studio, okay, if that is the case, go ahead and create the method in there. So now at this point, since we have our test is passing and everything, well, not test is passing, we don't have any compilation error. Visual Studio is happy. We should be able to run our test. And as you have guessed now, we don't have any, it definitely should fail, because let's go ahead and say run test. As you guess here, this right here, it says, hey, your test is failing. And this, let's see why it is failing. Of course, right now we have method not implemented exception. I mean, the method hasn't been implemented. So now at this point, we can go ahead into our main project, into this method, and start writing some code. Of course, we don't need this method anymore. We can go ahead and get rid of it. Okay, very fast implementation, just to get rid, let's say, just for now, just returns. Instead of returning integer, I want to make sure that method returns long integer. So this is just for now. Save this one. Let's go into, of course, we haven't done anything. We just would return 0 instead of not implemented to return 0. And we come in here and then run the test again. See, when we do that, as you can see right here, our error message is now different. We are expecting value 1, but it's returning 0 because that's what our method so far does, right? All right, just to make sure it passed now. Of course, this test is irrelevant, but at least we can see our green arrow right here. Our test is passing. As you can see, the green and this method is passed. And it took 2 milliseconds. Okay. Now we have our line set up. All right. Let's go back into the problem. Very first thing we need this text file here. So how are we going to handle this one? I'm thinking into our main project, I'm going to add a folder here. I'm just going to say a data. And in these, let's name is core data provider. This is not really, so we just can say make it static, because all we can do is we're just going to return that text to data to the color. So static, I'm going to return a string, get data. If you guys are not familiar, if you're new to a C#, this is a syntax. This is called escape. If you need a bunch of string here, we can use the escape sequence character here, ampersand. Okay, and in here, I'm just going to dump those. Basically, I'm going to copy this one and paste it here. Okay, there is now a problem because you know every name is put inside the double quote here, right? So we have to skip the double quote sequence in each of them. I would rather prefer to do a little differently. If you do a Control H in Visual Studio, and then I'm going to say go and find the double quote, and for now replace all the double quote by a single quote here. and I'm going to say in the current document that it doesn't touch anywhere in the Visual Studio in our project. It will take a while to replace all of those. It replaced with 10,328 names, which is okay. All right, now we can say instead this is the last. Let me close this. Oops. Why my Visual Studio is acting up? Okay, so I'm going to replace this single quote here by a double quote. And then I'm going to replace this is my end of the line, and then I don't need this. Okay, this is very basic, kind of like we're trying to set it up, right? So basically, instead of reading any files, basically our data is inside a class, a static class. We can just read this data. Okay, so far so good. All right, our data are here, and this is our just static class. Now let's go ahead and write a little bit of code. Just go in here, and I'm gonna create a private field here called, it's going to be a string, and it's going to be a names. Okay, and then let's create a little constructor in this class. All we're going to do in the constructor, basically grab the data and dump it into this private field here. So to do that, we have a little helper class, static class. Inside this data namespace, we have this guy, and this guy knows how to get the data. Okay. This should be a. So how can we write the unit test to make sure the data is actually read? To do that, since we are in the conversation of writing unit test, so I'm going to say, all right, just verify our data is read correctly. I'm going to just say, right, no, just this is a helper method. We can get rid of this one once we achieve our goal. The goal is to find the sum of the name score, right? So I'm going to say string, just write a Boolean method here. Data exists. So it's basically return string okay. This method basically these are little helper methods and say whether the data is actually exists in our private field or not, right? So basically we're going to go ahead and do the unit testing this one. To do that, let's go in here and then write little private method to make sure data exists, something like that. And okay, I'm going to call this okay. So what this method does here, basically, when we do a unit test for this one, I'm going to say I'm going to return true. I want to make sure the data, if this unit test passed, this unit test method passed, that means we have read that string into our field correctly into constructor of our class. Let's go and do head unit test. Of course, these are not, you don't really have to do unit test, but it's a good idea to make sure we all the lossy that we put it into our main class has unit test. Okay, at this point, as you can see, this is green, means our basically this is working correctly. Okay, let's go into the problem, next problem that we have to tackle. One at a time. It says, okay, now very first thing is to begin by sorting it into alphabetical order. Of course, this data right now is not sorted. Next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna sort these into alphabetical order. And even before that, let's go ahead and write a method here. I'm going to say public make sure records are make sure names are sorted. Get sorted records. This method doesn't exist, but I just wanna, and I'm gonna say the first method, first name of that method would return something called, I don't know, maybe whatever the first name would be when we sort it. I even don't know what exists. So of course this method is gonna fail. So let's go ahead and write some tests here. So I'm going to go into our main project here. It created little. So because like we asked the Visual Studio to create a method like this, it doesn't know what kind of data type to return. But what I was envisioning in there is something like our method should return list of names that are sorted. Okay. Just for now, I'm gonna say return null just to pass. Okay, now we have to write a little bit of logic to do a sorting. At this point, we know we have a names here. All the fields are red. So let's write some code. We can say a return. We have the names property here. We're going to do a split. We know our data is split by the comma. So here's a comma, split that into character array. If there are any empty records, we are not interested on that one. Okay. Remove that empty entries from there. We remember, like, our signature of this method is we need to return a list of names that are sorted. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to use some little bit of projection here. We're going to use some lambda expression, select. Let's say these are the names that we're selecting, and then each of those names right now it's delimited by the single quote. We need to get rid of those now. So I'm going to say replace the single quote by empty string. Okay, that's the first thing we can do. And the next thing we can do, maybe we're going to use this replace the method again. And if there are any empty any double quote in the name, we're going to replace that also by the empty string. Okay. So basically, we're going through each of those records and taking whether it has a single quote or double quote and replacing those. The next thing we have to do, once that is all done, we have to do order by, right? We're going to do order by. We can order the name in ascending order, so that. And once that is done, of course, since we have to return the to list, we can come here and then we will say to list. Okay. This is our very first method. What this method does, we achieve very little task. Basically, we have a bunch of record in there, and then we're going to split that record and basically remove some impure data. In this case, the impure data might be single code or double code, and we can order it. And that. So at this point, I can go ahead and run my unit test. I'm declaring here a very first item in that should be this, but I don't know. And of course, this is our unit test method, and test method here. And by doing that, I should be able to run this method now. Run test. So this method, as you can guess right here, I was expecting this, but it said it gave me something like a Mary, but that doesn't really make sense because there must be a lot of names starting from A. Why it gave me Mary means something my implementation is not correct, right? So here's my name. My request does order by name. Get sorted records. Let me make sure my data file here. It didn't really do any sorting here because it gave me the Mary as if the record hasn't really been sorted at all. So how can we solve this problem? Let me make sure I copied everything here. Yeah, looks like it. Okay. Here are the names. We sort those names, remove empty entries, replace any of the single code by that, and then order by name. Okay, I will do one more unit test here. Let's make sure. I'm going to see the count of this method. Let's say I'm saying this many 1,000 records should be there. I don't know, it could be wrong. So this would at least tell me how many total records. So it says 5,163 names are there. So they are saying there are certain name. Well, they didn't say how many names are there, but 46 kilobytes of data. Okay. That test doesn't really help us. So this right. Okay, this video is becoming longer, so we'll continue with the second part of the video soon. This can be the first part. We'll continue the second part. Thank you so much, guys.